What's up, guys? I tried out Boulder so you don't have to, and be very happy that I did, because my god, is this the worst skill I have played in the game so far. There are so many downsides to this skill that I'm not even sure where to start. The hitbox on it is very, very small. It quickly stacks up unstoppable, so you can't even push the enemies. It has an absolutely huge spirit cost. You can't use it in tight corridors as it stops dealing damage as soon as it hits a wall. The list goes on and on and on. We can start with the couple good things about it. When it does work, the damage on it is actually pretty solid. I wasn't too upset from the numbers I was seeing when it actually did do damage. It wasn't that hard to scale. The tree fit quite well. The Paragon board fit really well. Being able to use Vasilis on our helmet slot to turn this into a werebear skill opened up a lot of options for it. I even tried this with Grizzly Rage and Rampaging, trying to get as many procs as possible. And it's a decently fast hitting skill, so it was able to get a respectable amount of Rampaging stacks for the crit damage. Along with Earthen Might, even with a low lucky hit chance, I noticed that it was proccing fairly often, so that did feel alright. Using Umbral on our rings, we were able to mostly solve the spirit issue, weaving Earth Spikes in between Boulder casts and being able to generate a lot with Debilitating Roar and Grizzly Rage. It didn't feel like I couldn't cast it when I did want to cast it, but after that, that's about it for the positives. On to the negatives. I wanted to hop into what I thought was a fairly easy nightmare dungeon for my gear level, and I couldn't even get past the first objective in the room. One of the very first issues you'll run into and you see if you ever fight a suppressor monster. Normally what this does is whenever you use a projectile, the projectile will stop when it hits the edge of the suppressor. So what you have to do is you have to go inside of the suppressor field and then use your abilities. Well, the problem with Boulder is whenever you roll it, it pushes the monster away from you. This shouldn't be too big of a problem because you can just dash or trample right back into the suppressor zone. Well, actually, as soon as you leave the suppressor field, your Boulder instantly gets destroyed. Not sure why this is. Okay, so then we just need to dash quickly. Nope, if you roll the Boulder, no matter how quickly you try to spam dash or trample, the Boulder will instantly be destroyed as soon as the mob moves once. Another affix is the sort of chilling wind wall you see on monsters. As soon as the Boulder hits this, it instantly slows to almost a halt and just rolls in place and does no damage to any of the monsters. Both these affixes are quite common and pretty much just brick your Nightmare Dungeon key as soon as you start running into these monsters. Especially if you're fighting higher level monsters that you need to kill quickly, or if they have some sort of vampiric or life regen affix. Moving on to the next issue, if monsters do happen to not die after the first Boulder, you kind of have to chase after them and follow them to throw another Boulder, because Boulder has like a set duration that it travels unless it hits a wall. So you need to kind of be right on top of the monster when you throw it. But then when you roll the Boulder, the monster gets pushed away from you. So it's kind of hard to choose between close or distant damage, but you kind of have to like chase after the monster anyway. Well, the problem you'll notice is if you have to use a couple Boulders to kill an elite mob, soon enough they'll gain unstoppable from being crowd controlled one too many times. This wouldn't be a problem except for the fact that the only time Boulder does damage is if the monster is rolling with the Boulder. So when they become unstoppable for 5-10 seconds, it feels like an eternity, you throw one Boulder, they get hit for one tick of damage, and then it just rolls right past them. I actually got a perfect Fists of Fate roll early on, and I was really looking forward to a build to try this out on, and I thought Boulder would be perfect for it, spamming tons of crowd control and building up stagger bars and things like that. This almost makes it so that the monster becomes instantly unstoppable on your first Boulder, and if they're not dead, you're not going to be doing any damage to them for quite a while. I mentioned the walls before too. You better hope that no monster is ranged and just sits next to a wall, because it is almost impossible to sort of scoop them up off the wall. If you try to go parallel with the wall, the rock pretty much just clips against it and is instantly destroyed. On top of that, you might have noticed on the world tiers that monsters get smarter. I've actually had monsters literally watch me wind up to throw the Boulder and just simply sidestep and dodge out of the way. The hitbox on Boulder is also extremely small. I feel like based on the size of the animation, it really should be grabbing more monsters, but it just doesn't. So if any monsters are ranged and spread out, you're just going to be throwing one Boulder and then having to constantly reposition and take 10 to 15 seconds just to kill like 4 mobs that happen to not be lined up correctly. Another issue I ran into that I'm not even sure if it's working correctly or if it's a bug, I felt like I could only damage so many monsters at a time. I could throw a boulder through 10 monsters, but it would finish and most of them would still be at full health. I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. It felt like I could maybe only do damage to like 5 monsters at a time, if that. I guess it really didn't matter because the hitbox was so small I could barely get more than that at a time anyway. Boulder also seems to kind of function like Tornado, where it's not quite a damage over time skill, but it seems to have certain tick rates or tick intervals where it does damage. It looked like it could maybe do 5 ticks of damage, 1 at the start, and then it looked like there was a certain amount of time before it would kind of do 2 more and then 2 final ones at the end. If you use Boulder and it doesn't go the full duration all the way until it's destroyed on its own, you essentially lose almost 2 ticks worth of the damage, resulting in 40% less DPS per cast of the skill. And this happens pretty much every time. Almost any dungeon you're in, there's going to be some sort of wall or obstruction, Waller being another affix that just completely destroys the ability. I really just could not come up with any redeeming qualities for this ability whatsoever. The closest I got was when I was testing out the Fists of Fate, I was able to do pretty respectable stagger damage to bosses. Now, that being said, the boss needed to have an absolutely enormous hitbox so that I could get more than 1 tick of damage on them. But when I was able to, with all the sorts of CC going on, it did stack up pretty quickly. I'm really not sure what the idea behind this ability is, because it's not even in the core category initially. I think it's supposed to be some sort of utility skill, but then it has a bunch of crit nodes attached behind it. I feel like they really didn't playtest this ability whatsoever and just wanted to throw in some sort of earth sort of utility skill. I think it would have been much more interesting if maybe there was some sort of like quicksand style AoE pool you could put on the ground that would slow monsters and slowly pull them in. You can make it some sort of damage over time ability as well, so it could fulfill both the utility aspect and the damage roll. I want to show you the gear and the build I was using because, again, the damage itself really wasn't a problem. It was the mechanics of the skill. You can see I got my boulder all the way up to a 14, doing pretty good damage. On my gear, my weapon I thought was pretty good. I have vulnerable damage on here. We were using the exploit glyph to apply vulnerable, so we were really taking advantage of that. We had Earthen Might and Rampaging to do big crits and crit damage, so the damage itself wasn't bad. I had almost a max roll metamorphic stone aspect. My gear is pretty much what I've been running. I have Vasilis and Insatiable Fury. For my build, it was pretty straightforward. I'll pull it up here. We had Earth Spike. We had increased damage with core skills because Boulder becomes a core skill. We had some damage reduction in Werebear because we're always in Werebear form. We had Debilitating Roar. Defensive, I actually felt pretty tanky most of the time, except for when the boulder didn't kill anything, then I was just constantly getting beat up. I tried going for Nature's Reach because I thought I can maybe take advantage of the distant damage, but you kind of had to chase after the mob so that you could throw another boulder at them because you can't just boulder from far away. You can see we have Boulder here. I went for the 20% crit chance while we have Fortify. So it pretty much had 20% crit on top of what I always had, which helped keep Earthen Might up because you gain bonus on Earthen Might. You can see here, it's a 5% chance, but then 10% with crits, and then 10% if the target is knocked back. So it should be pretty easy to keep up, and it honestly was. Earthen Might was up quite a bit, even with the, you can see, I'm up to a 5% lucky hit chance. It's 4% base, but I have enough on my gear to take it up a percent. We had Crushing Earth, increased damage to slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back to enemies. I was hoping that this would apply for all of the CCs because I think that's how it works for Sork, but I didn't really notice it doing that. Safeguard, we had Fortify up all the time. We were always fortified. Some more damage here. I was going for this. I don't know if this actually worked out. I went for Envenom because I took Constricting Tendrils. Not sure if it super helped, but there wasn't really anywhere else to put the points because we took Grizzly Rage and we put a bunch of points in here. This is only 6% damage because we can't use a Storm skill. The other kind of sort of little tech that I liked was since we used Insatiable Fury, we had access to Trample and Earthen Bulwark without actually having to put points in there. So we can move the points elsewhere. Probably would be able to take them out of Envenom and move them into Unstoppable if you want something when you're not in Grizzly Rage. That is an option. On the Paragon board, I thought it went pretty well. I don't want to go over it too much because I really don't want anyone to play this build, but we had the exploit glyph, we had survival instincts, which feels really good. Here we have earth and sky because we're Boulder's at earth skill. Over here we have undaunted for damage reduction while fortified, and we're always fortified. Earth and devastation. Monsters are constantly crowd controlled by many different sources. We have ancestral guidance, which would proc pretty much every other Boulder because the spirit cost was so high. We had a little bit of spirit on kill here. Spirit really wasn't a problem, so I was not too worried about that. We have spirit glyph here for every time we are critting, we're doing more damage, which we're constantly critting. It's multi-hitting. And then a final glyph over here, werebear for damage reduction and damage. So again, I really feel like I had tons of damage. It really wasn't a problem. Mechanically speaking, the skill is just so bad. I think there's tons of things you could do, like adding in an aspect that adjusts the way it works. Maybe if it was just bigger, that could certainly be a good start. If it costs less spirit whenever you used it, maybe you just make it fall down from the sky and it like bounces a couple times or something. I don't know. There's tons of things they could do that just is not what it currently is. So where am I going to go from here? Well, to be honest, there's not a ton of options because this build is absolutely terrible for farming as well. Not only has Blizzard been nerfing gold farm spots, I can't farm gold with this build like at all in any sort of efficient manner. So I could just swap over to Pulverize and run that for a bit, but I think I'm actually going to go try Landslide. If you've been following the channel a little bit, I made a video early on my sort of starter build that I ended up playing and I was grinding like tier 3 with while I was looking for Tempest Roar. So I kind of want to revisit that build. A lot of people were asking for an update on that build. I'm really looking forward to kind of trying that again and seeing if I can improve on that. It is a sort of version of the Trample Slide build, but I wanted to do my own take on it. I know a lot of people are using the Crone staff to reset the cooldown more often of that build. I don't think that's the best way to play it. I think it's a pretty interesting way to play it. I'm going to try something along the lines of maybe not even using Symbiotic and just playing a pure Landslide build with Trampled Earth to sort of clean up the AoE. I'm hoping it performs at least a little bit better than the current build, but we'll see. So yeah, I really don't recommend anyone trying Boulder. If you want to, I'll put the build down below because I did work on it a little bit, but I didn't put too much effort into the notes or anything because I really don't want anyone else to try this until it's changed. So if you guys have any comments about the build or if you've tried Boulder as well, let me know your thoughts on it. I mean, I think if you want to play in low level content, it's probably okay, but I really would just not recommend this to anyone. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.